Here at Peterborough Rape Crisis, we use our resources in a number of different ways, and we could split our resources into three broader categories: journaling and colouring, self-care, and sensory and grounding. I'm going to explain to you some of the resources that we have and how they might be helpful for our young people that we support. So journaling and colouring is one of the categories that we split our resources into. Here are some of the resources that we hand out to the young people that we support. So some people find that colouring in is a really mindful activity for them. It helps them to calm and ground themselves, and it's something that once it's finished, young people can be quite proud of and might display in their room. We also hand out different textures of things to colour with. So we have pencils, we have felt tips, we have gel pens, and it's about finding what works for each individual young person. With journaling, again, we have a couple of different sizes of journals that we hand out, and these can be used for a number of different things. So some young people find it really hard to verbalise how they're feeling, but they might find that it's useful to write down their thoughts and their feelings. Young people might also have things that they want to say out loud, whether that be to family and friends, whether that be to teachers, whether that be to us as their CHISVAs, or some young people even feel that they want to say something to their perpetrators. And if that can't be facilitated, then sometimes writing it down is a really helpful exercise for them to put it somewhere tangible rather than having it in their minds. And again, with some of the bigger journals, we could encourage doodling. Brain dumping is something we do with a lot of our young people, which is giving them like a blank page and space to just write down any thoughts that come into their minds, whether that's about their disclosure and what's going on, or whether that's about like social things, family things, school things, anything that might be taking up space in their mind. We encourage them to put down on paper to try and release it. Again, we're really led by our young people, and this is so helpful for some and others don't get along with it. So that's why it's important to be led by the young people and ensure that we're listening to what works for them. When talking about self-care with our young people, again, we take a really tailored approach. So we understand that no two ways of coping or self-care could be the same for each individual. Here are some of the tools that we use to help our young people identify what works for them when it comes to self-care. This piece of paper that says 50 ways to take a break has lots of really helpful self-care routines and things to do on it. And we like to go through this with our young people so they can identify what works for them and what is achievable for them. We then offer them a self-care bingo sheet where they can fill in the blanks with some of the ideas from the 50 ways to take a break. And we would encourage our young people to try and complete a self-care bingo every 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, whatever works for them. And especially if learning to look after themselves is something new to them, we wouldn't want to overwhelm them and give them something totally unachievable. But it's just a way of them really honing in on what they are doing for themselves. We do also have one that we've pre-made, which are some ways to cope and possible alternatives to self-harm. But again, we understand that all the young people that we work with are individual, and that approach needs to be taken. At the bottom, we've reminded them of their 5 senses, as when we come on to grounding, we'll speak about how important it is to engage the senses in self-care, in grounding, and so we're just reminding them by putting those icons in. Now, we also hand out some resources to promote self-care routines. So some bath bombs, hand creams which are scented, hot chocolates and teas, and face masks. And this is a really good way to try and remind our young people to prioritise time for themselves. Again, we're not going to take a one-size-fits-all approach. We're not going to suggest the same thing to every young person, but it's about giving them a range of tools to work with. So when they are struggling, they've got a bank of skills and knowledge to hone in on and find what works for them in that moment. So our last lot of resources are to do with sensory input and grounding. So some of our young people really benefit from having different types of sensory input, especially if they're having lots of repeating, possibly quite anxious thoughts. Having fiddle or fidget toys to manifest those anxious thoughts into movement can be really helpful for them. I know sometimes fidget and fiddle toys can have a bit of a bad rep, and it's seen as maybe the young people aren't quite listening to you or aren't paying attention when they're fiddling. But actually, in our experience, giving a young person something to divert those fidgety thoughts to helps them to concentrate more and helps them to focus on what we're saying rather than what's going round and round in their head. So again, this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Some young people will really enjoy fidget toys. Some young people will enjoy the more sort of soft and squeezy fidget toys. Other young people will enjoy the more sort of firmer and squeezy fidget toys. So that's why we have lots, so we can find out what works for each individual. Sometimes these fidget toys can also help distract from pinching or picking skin if young people are prone to sort of picking their nail beds, pulling their hair, their lashes and things like that, or even pinching and picking their skin, especially ones like this that have got, you know, sort of the little bits that they can pick on, or something like this that feels quite skin-like, and digging the nails into that can emulate that sensation of digging the nails into the skin. So these can be sort of really positive distractions and something to steer away from aiming those habits at themselves. These little bits here are all things that would fall into sort of the grounding token category. And the reason we might use these is if a young person is having a flashback, maybe they feel like they're going to have a flashback, maybe they are stuck in a train of thought that they can't break away from. And it's about bringing the brain back to the here and now rather than focusing on the memory or the flashback. And the way we would use these grounding tokens is finding something that's small enough to fit into the palm of the hand and encouraging the young person to take note of the token, the grounding token. So how does the grounding token feel? Can you feel soft parts? Can you feel rough parts? Are there any sharp bits? Are there any smooth bits? Are there straight edges? Are there rounded edges? Does it warm up when you hold it in the palm of your hand? Is it cold? And does it stay cold when you put it in the palm of your hand? Is it rough? Does it make a noise when you tap it? And all of these different things are encouraging the young person to engage their senses and ground themselves in the moment of here and now. They are really, really handy tools to have. And again, no one token will work the same for each individual. Some young people prefer sort of the wood-like tokens, others the metal, some find comfort in crystals. And this shell represents something that you could literally just pick up when you're out on a walk. This could be a bit of gravel or a stone, or if you're on the beach, a beautiful shell. But it's just about utilising what is in the environment around that young person and how they can learn and develop skills to ground them in the moment. The important thing to remember when it comes to resources is that no one size fits all. This is why we have such a range of things to try with our young people. It's important to listen to what works for each individual and understand why it benefits them. When we're giving them resources, we want them to learn more about themselves and learn more about what helps them to calm. This really helps our young people to develop skills that will hopefully last a lifetime.